Good afternoon and welcome.
In Spanish, so bear with me. Mi nombre
My name is Adrian Arsht. I am the Executive Vice Chair of the Atlantic Council and the founder of the Adrian Arsht Latin America Center at the Atlantic Council. It is truly a pleasure to be here in Panama. The last time I visited was in 2022, and I still have fond memories of that trip where I explored Casco Viejo, Barro Colorado, and other places. Panama is a place where my interests converge. My passion for Latin America, for its resilience and biodiversity issues. More beyond these personal interests, it is an honor to open this important gathering in a country that has already been the stage for a summit of the Americas 2015 under the theme Prosperity with Equity. This event takes place at a crucial moment for the Americas, facing global challenges such as climate change, economic inequality, and the erosion of democratic values. With the 30th anniversary of the Summit of the Americas this December and the 10th edition in the Dominican Republic next year, we have a unique opportunity to reflect on the past and think about the future. Together with the U.S. Department of State, AmCham Panama, the Chamber of Commerce, and the corporate diplomacy, this event brings together today important leaders from government, business, civil society, and youth, all committed to building a more prosperous and inclusive future. Co- Collaboration across sectors and the inclusion of all voices are essential to make progress. What better backdrop than Panama, a country that truly serves as a bridge between the Americas. Thank you all for your participation and commitment. Welcome to this space for dialogue and collaboration. I would like to introduce the Minister Julio Molto, who will open the event in representation of President Molino. Afterward, we will hear from the Chancellor Javier Martinez Acha, who will then provide some remarks as well. Before joining a panel moderated by Jenna Ben Yehuda, Executive Vice President of the Atlantic Council, who also has an extensive career focused on Latin American issues. Minister Molto, who was appointed In his current role, just days after President Molino won the election in May, was formerly head of the National Police and brings to the government decades of experience in the public and private sectors. Welcome, Minister. Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable, distinguished uh, guest, Madam Adrienne Arsh, Executive Vice Chair of the Atlantic Council, Honorable Jason Marsak, Executive Director for the Adrian Arch Latin America Center, Honorable Madam Jana Ben Yehuda, Executive VP for the Atlantic Council, Honorable Madam Maria Fernanda Mosky, Assistant Director for the Adrian Arch Latin America Center for the Atlantic Council, Honorable Minister Mayer Mizrachi, Mayor for for Panama City, all of our special guests, and members of the media. It's a true honor to welcome all of you to this event. It is a truly significant event, especially those members of the Atlantic Council and the Adrian Arch Center, which throughout the last decade has played a key role in promoting innovative solutions for the most challenging problems of Latin America. Your presence and participation are crucial for the success of these sessions for reflection and cooperation and collaboration that without a doubt will contribute fundamentally to the success of our region. Building the future of intersectorial collaboration in the Summit of the Americas. It's a truly relevant theme in this space for dialogue that enjoins key stakeholders, leaders, reflects the imperative need of joining efforts of exploring new ways of cooperation to face the great challenges that we face in this region. We know that the current challenges are many and complex, from economic development and governance all the way to management and the effects of climate change, just to mention a few of them. Only through collaboration, through intersectorial collaboration, we can find sustainable, effective solutions that will help us to make progress to a more prosperous and inclusive future. Representing President Jose Raul Molino and the national government, I want to express my sincerest gratitude for having chosen Panama for this session. It's an honor to be a center of convergence for these relevant discussions that are so relevant for the future of this center. Panama, as a dialogue and cooperation center, has always been a bridge between the different sectors, countries, and cultures of Latin America. When we see the pillars that guide the visions of the Adrian Arch Center, we find clear alignment with our government strategy, which is based on shared values and common understandings. I want to highlight the strategic role that Panama plays as economic and geographic bridge for the Americas. Panama, thanks to its strategic location in the heart of the Americas, its emblematic canal, has been a key participant in all supply and demand chains. We not only facilitated efficient transport of goods between the Atlantic and the Pacific, but we also have a world-class infrastructure that includes competitive ports, active free trade zones, and a growing network of logistics and technological services. The ports of the interoceanic region of Panama are the most important transshipment hub in Latin America and the Caribbean. It's 5 world-class ports, more than 25 marine companies, and having key terminals. Panama offers more than 75 services on a weekly basis, consolidating as the logistical center for this entire region. In 2024, Panama expects to handle more than 9.5 million TEUs, surpassing most of the countries in the region, with only Brazil leading the charge. Although holding less than 1% of the population of the region, Panama manages more than 15% of transportation systems, consolidating as an indispensable hub for Latin America and the Caribbean. I don't want to overwhelm you too much and talk to you about so many details, but I think that there are three key points that we need to mention. The first one is economic growth. The growth projections for 2024 in Panama and 2025 are extremely motivating. According to JP Morgan, the GDP would grow in 5.2% in 2024. Moody's has projected a growth of 4% for 2024, and for 2025 term, both Moody's as well as Berkeley's expect a growth of 4.5%. These forecasts reflect the strength of the Panamanian economy and its ability to maintain as an engine for growth in the entire region. This will help us to continue promoting inclusive policies that favor job creation and strengthening SMEs and the attraction of direct foreign investment. Our policy looks to involve Panama more comprehensively in global value chains, ensuring that growth reaches all corners of our country. Second point, inflation. Inflation has been held to the lowest in the region thanks to the dollarization monetary procedures. The average inflation in Latin America was 5.2%, while in Panama it was located in 1.5%. And third point, the responsibility in financial management. A focus that is responsible and sustained through our government and the Ministry of Finance has implemented cost contention expense contention policies of almost $1.3 billion for 2024 and has presented a 2025 budget that reflects transparency and trust. The strategic plan of the government for 2025 to 2029 has as a goal to strengthen the economy of the country, improve infrastructure, and ensure the well being of citizens in the long term. One of the fundamental pillars of this plan is the implementation of a a sustainable tax framework that looks to achieve responsible usage of the public's funds and to ensure the sustainability of public debt. This framework is ensured to promote economic growth without placing the fiscal debt risk of our country. And we have a public channel for investment that establishes priority areas for resources during the next 5 years. These investments will be focused on key areas such as infrastructure, education, renewable energy, and especially technology. Through these strategic projects, Panama seeks to not only improve the quality of life of Panamanians, but also to strengthen its competitiveness at the global level. Another point that aligns with the strategy of strengthening and improving collaborations between governments, leaders, entrepreneurs, civil society, and youth is democratic governance. Democratic institutions in our country are the pillar of our stability. We are committed with the strengthening democracy and transparency, not only at the national level, but also in our relationships with the countries in the region and with organized international organizations that join us. We truly believe in solid governance, which is the basis for a future of peace and prosperity. Panama is committed to a sustainable future with the protection of our national resources. We are happy to mention that we are a carbon neutral country with initiatives that promote renewable energies. We know that climate sustainability is a global challenge, and as a region, we have to face it together in a collaborative and innovative focus. With the view towards the future, Panama is working on several initiatives that not only benefit in our country, but also to countries in our region. One of the key issues in the region is the semiconductor industry, a segment that opens doors for Latin America and for the global digital economy. In that sense, Panama has placed itself as a regional center for technological advancement, promoting ecosystems that favor innovation and investment in advanced technologies. In a surprisingly short period of time, we've made significant progress, which have been acknowledged by the OECD as selecting us as the host country for the sessions of the informal exchange for semiconductors, which will be held in this country next month. It will be a priceless moment for us to assess collaborative relationships, and the inclusion of the OECD validates our potential and strengthens our international reputation as an emerging leader in this field. We also continue to advance in the manner of adhering to the goal of adhering to the associated state for Mercosur, expanding our global reach and facilitating the access of our products and services to key global markets. We have worked tirelessly to achieve this goal, which is going to be fulfilled in the next 2 weeks. We feel that global economic movement is crucial for prosperity, and Panama is destined to lead these efforts for Latin America and the region. I want to emphasize that Panama will continue to working as a bridge of the America, promoting collaboration between public and private sector. Paraphrasing the title of this conference, Constructing the Future of Intersectoral Collaboration in finding joint solutions that are innovative and that the creation of opportunities that benefit all citizens in our region. Together, I am sure we will be able to achieve this. Finally, I want to thank and express my gratitude to Frank Mora, coordinator of the summit, who has taken on the important and titanic role of organizing the 10th meeting summit of the Atlantic Council, which will take place in 2025, as stated by Ms. Adrian Erst. We are focused on this important and event, and we are working to ensure that all details required for the preliminary meetings and the event are a success. I want to thank Jason Marsak, Vice President for the Adrian Ash Latin America Center, for his leadership and vision for developing strategic for strategies that help to highlight the region. And also special thanks to Adrian Arsht, Vice President of the Latin America Center and founder of the center that bears her name for Latin America. With her vision and commitment, she has been a source of inspiration for all of us. Her tireless work, Madam Adrian, is an inspiration, and your work in promoting innovative solutions for the challenges in Latin America is truly rewarding. Wanting to promote collaboration between countries has left an undeniable footprint to transform the entire region. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. This center that bears your name, it has become a reference center for the region in promoting interregional collaboration. I trust that the work that is going to be done by the representatives of the Atlantic Council and the Adrian Arch Center and all the participants in the summit will be a trigger for truly innovative change. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for being here in Panama. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jason Marsak, Vice President and Senior Center for the Adrian Arch Center for Latin America for the Atlantic Council. Good afternoon. For me, it's an honor to I have a great friend for the Atlantic Council, Minister Javier Martinez Acha. He's a minister, he's a lawyer, he has a 30-year career in banking and finance investments, and in just a little while is sure that the national perspective of Panama, with his leadership in the ministry, will be transformative. As Minister Molto has stated, Minister Martinez Acha was designated as Minister of Foreign Affairs for Panama by President Molino just a few days after having won the election in May of this year. The Chancellor will give some initial remarks and then will sit in the panel member. Mr. Chancellor, welcome.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Since all of you know, I'm a chancellor who doesn't do a lot of formalities, so I will just repeat the protocolary words mentioned by Minister Molto. Miss Adrian, thank you for being here today, and we will try to be as concise as possible. I warn you, this is my third of five presentations today, and due to certain reasons, this will be the longest one. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting amongst friends, an event called to debate on the problems and challenges that the Western Hemisphere faces. It's very important to talk about these today. Its title is truly Ravine, building the future of intersectoral collaboration in the Summit of the Americas. As all of you know, the next summit in Dominican Republic will be in 2025. The first summit was called by President Clinton 30 years ago in Miami with the goal of promoting economic growth, prosperity in the countries of the Americas based on the democratic values. Let's put it in the historic framework and context. The US at that moment was the only superpower in the world. And even then, there was an initiative of promoting solidarity within the region. It would be unfair to not mention an important historical history, which was the alliance that was promoted by President Kennedy in March 1961. It is necessary to also establish that the heads of the governments, ministers, have all had the presence of the president or vice president of the United States. Recently, in a regional summit, I say this with great sadness, the assistance of presidents and VPs was scarce. In the first summit in Miami, we spoke about the ALCA, the free trade zone area, which would have a basis of a progressive elimination of duties and would facilitate trade in the Western Hemisphere. Although the good intentions of the participants was there, the free trade zone of the Americas was placed uh, in hesitancy by those that promoted the ALBA. I don't think I have to explain the total failure that the ALBA was. Before the summit of Mar del Plata, government officers presented a possibility of reviewing the virtuousness of the free trade zone of the Americas, such as it was created. It placed on the table debatable issues that, with goodwill of everyone, or of most, would very well have been able to end in collaborative and agreed upon solutions. We understand that ALBA was promoted by two countries that are not democratic in nature, two countries whose systems have failed them. That has shown their own documents, such as that one established in the ninth summit of the ALBAs in Caracas 2010, in which then president of one of the countries, Venezuela, stated the goal of the ALBA is independence, revolution, and socialism. No independence, no revolution, nor social policies. Is misery, dictatorship, and failure. The propaganda members of ALBA are the same ones that state the OEA, the OAS should disappear. That's not going to happen. But we are not on this event to debate about the failures of others. I mention it just so that you keep in mind a phenomenon that is always present in many parts of our countries in the region. Every time there's a good project, there's with possibility of benefiting communities that are most marginalized, there's an alternate option that emerges that pretends to destabilize and destroy. It's true that the relationship of the countries of the Latin America and Caribbean with Washington is made up of numerous agreements and some disagreements. An example that I bring over here to mind is the signature of the treaty that ends the administration and management of the Panama Canal and adjacent territories. It was an effort of diplomacy That roadmap, and not others, is the one that shows us the value of understanding and overcoming differences in a frank dialogue. Pan Americanism has a long tradition, intellectual tradition, that has been promoted by important academia of other countries. One of our greatest sons, Ricardo Joaquin Alfaro, spoke about the predicating the exercise of practical diplomacy as a useful mechanism to solve controversies. I want to remind you, everyone, that the OAS has its immediate history in the Pan American Union created in what 1910. Since we're going to have a panel a little bit later, I'll try to be brief here. Summits represent a mirror of the reality of a snapshot of the time. It's probable that the next one to be celebrated in November in 2025, we may have to face disagreements, painful disagreements, due to the electoral frauds of some countries or persecution to people who defend the rights of their peoples to decide. We are not a fragmented hemisphere. We are a single hemisphere with the great majority of people who believe and practice democracy, even with all of its imperfections. Reviewing the history of previous summits, I have found an episode that called to my attention. In 2022 in Los Angeles, the debate on important and transcendent issues happened a few days prior to the formal engagement. U.S. President Joe Biden decided not to invite some countries because they did not fulfill the human and political rights in their countries. Some countries considered that there was division. There was a president that, being from the Democratic left, Mr. Boric, advocated for the representatives of dictatorships and argued for it in the same way. Let them be present, but so that they can hear from the rest of the presidents to free political prisoners unfairly imprisoned in the jails of their countries. I mean that even there were differences in our countries, democracy enjoins us. There are numerous tasks awaiting us at the summit in 2025 in the Dominican Republic. We'll have to establish criteria when facing challenges that are not new but have manifested with greater presence in the last few years. We have lived the largest migration crisis of all times. It is a big drama that needs to be seen from the sense of compliance of human rights and also the peculiarities of every country that takes it on. The decision to migrate is not taken only due to a lack of social progress, but also citizen insecurity, the lack of democracy, freedom, and human rights. Drug trafficking is now a threat to democracies, also to health. And it has, together with multiple contexts, become one of the greatest reasons for insecurity and crime in our streets. Modern organized crime had ever more ambitious strategies. Insecurity and dictatorships are today phenomenons that we see quite present throughout our continent. If we want to defeat this, we just have to work in summits by sharing our values, fighting for democracies, and above all, what what enjoins all of us can overcome those small differences that separate us. I want to congratulate organizers. I want to acknowledge the effort of the United States that I have to say joins Panama in acknowledging Edmundo Gonzalez as the president-elect of Venezuela. I want to say that the battle for democracy is unwavering, and I want to confirm that President Molino gives you his warmest welcome to this country so that we can continue fighting for our values, our principles, and for unity in diversity, through diversity. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jenna Ben Yahuda, Executive Vice President of the Atlantic Council.
Por favor.
Please, I invite you to the stage.
¿Dónde me siento? Gracias,
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Jenna Ben Yehuda, and I'm the Executive VP for the Atlantic Council. And for me, it's a true honor to moderate this important conversation titled Lessons of the Past and Future Challenges for the Summit of the Americas, the government perspective. After having worked in the U.S. Embassy in Panama 20 years ago and in the summit in Trinidad in 2009 with Secretary of State Clinton, to be able to participate in this event is just like coming back home. So again, first, I would like to present our panel members, starting with His Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Panama, Javier Martinez Acha. We also have His Excellency Ruben Arturo Sillier, Vice Minister of Multilateral Foreign Policy of the Dominican Republic. It's also a privilege to welcome the National Coordinator for the U.S. Ambassador Francisco Mora, who has been a key collaborator in this series of events celebrating the 30 years of the Summit of the Americas. This group represents the perspectives of the past, present, and future for the Summit of the Americas, and their perspectives will be extremely valuable. Let's start with a few questions. Mr. Minister, if I could start with you, in your experience, what were the main challenges and achievements for Panama when organizing the Summit of the Americas in 2015? And what lessons do you consider may guide future summits, including the next one in Dominican Republic? Thank you very much. I feel that Panama could carry out a successful summit uh, by promoting multilateralism. I want to remind you that this summit was programmed with a lot of time for preparing by different governments, and the local government ensured that we had all the heads of state of the country, and we had an important meeting at that time, according to the strategies of the U.S. And it was thought that although there were differences between countries, we could have a path to dialogue. And Panama, that important tradition of not just the government at the time, but also of a country of trying to find consensus and finding spaces for dialogue, benefited from that experience and was able to carry out what I think was a successful summit, thanks to the participation of many members of the officers of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, thanks to the work that was done by the ambassadors of the OAS. And I have to say that that summit helped as to plant a seed that could have borne a fruit that we all still await in this region. I agree with the phrase stated by President Boric. We don't have to be afraid of sitting down with governments that don't share our values. We have to have that cultural debate because culture, the history is on the side of democracies, and we are seeing that in the examples of what is happening in countries that do not exercise democratic values within their internal situation. The dialogue, tolerance, and consensus are pillars that maybe in the short term do not bear the fruits that everyone wants, but it is the path to take to convince countries that believe that autocracy, violation of human rights, the non-respect to public elections only leads to misery. Thank you for that perspective. I want to again go to the past to now move to a little bit to the present and future. Mr. Vice Minister, if we could ask you as host country for the next summit, what are the key goals and possible themes that the Dominican Republic hopes to promote to ensure an effective and transformative summit, especially in during a decrease in global transition after a year of elections? Thank you very much. I would like to first state my gratitude for inviting me to this panel. Uh, we place great value not only for celebrating the summit of the Americas in the Dominican Republic in 2025, but also because the exercise that is being carried out by this event of the Atlantic Council is an exercise that uh, guides us to where we want to reach, meaning calling all key stakeholders that can contribute to strengthen the relationships amongst the countries in the region. Having said that, the main goal from the Dominican Republic have, when accepting the organizing of the Summit of the Americas, the first thing that we want to state is that this summit be acknowledged by everyone as a summit that went beyond a protocolary mission, that it be acknowledged as a summit where there were concrete agreements made, not just a Santa Claus checklist, but five, six, seven key points from which we were able to reach consensus and agreement where all countries agree are crucial to ensure the development of the region and even more so after the words of the minister that there be points that convince us that our differences are less than that in which we agree, and that convince us that dialogue can help us to reach agreements, and that the elements that have to do with political ideological issues are not always the main elements to move forward in advancing the region. We hope that in this summit we are able to adopt a declaration where all presidents are pleased that they made an effort and that they were able to achieve a result, and that all of the stakeholders will participate in the summit, including the private sector, the youth sector, and civil society sectors, also are represented by the results that are achieved in that summit. Finally, we hope that this is a summit that is valued and acknowledged as a support mechanism to consolidate regional integration of Latin America with the United States and Canada. Thank you, Mr. Vice Minister. Ambassador Mora, I want to ask, we were talking a little bit about the reality that work is not only focused on the summer, but but it's done throughout the year. Can you talk to us about the process as to how we are able to connect the past with the future? What are the ways that meetings are held, and how this type of architecture is used to include civil society, voices of private sector, the youth voices, and others? Yes, thank you, thank you, Jenna. I also want to acknowledge what Minister and Vice Minister have said, and I want to thank the Atlantic Council for being an ally for this event. For me, I believe that the fundamental value of the Summit of the Americas is that it gathers not only leaders, but also civil society, private sector, youth leaders, that is truly provides insight and contributions that promote not only dialogue but also to establish an agenda for the hemisphere. Jenna, and right now there is no space, no forum where government stakeholders and non-government stakeholders can gather to have dialogues, to influence on an agenda for the continent. This process, has the Vice Chancellor has said, is not done just on the day of the summit or the day before the summit. This is done through a negotiating process that lasts months. But the work that is done is the work that is done between summits. In during those 3 years, there's a follow-up and monitoring process eh, to be able to achieve the issues that were deemed relevant during that previous summit. During the Los Angeles summit, it provided tangible results such as the Health Action and Resilience Action Plan. Because of what had happened with COVID, that work continued to be done, and we continue to work on it to be able to achieve the tangible uh, goals that turned into results. The movement towards democracy is a result of the Summit of the Americas. The Anti-Corruption Act for the Americas was also arose from the work that was done during the summit. And again, I want to repeat, there's no other forum that can provide these type of results in the continent, and that's why I think it's important to highlight the work that is done not only by governments and leaders, but also private sector that nourishes, that hold us accountable, that tell us when we're not doing the job. And these are the groups that have a direct connection with the citizenry that can tell us what is truly required to improve the life and well-being of citizens of the region. Thank you, Mr. Minister. I want to go back to you thinking about the democratic charter that was signed in 2001 on September 11th. It was truly an emotional moment for the region. It was a moment where several nations were enjoying the in this current times. It would be almost impossible to fathom. Could you tell us currently the autocratic forces, the difficulties of democracies, the several global threats, the and several nations that are facing a very complex situation? How would you state that what could affect this moment? What can be done in this fragmented and fractured moment? And what were the main challenges that could be used as lessons for the future? Your question has several parts. I want to quote the example by Vice Minister Moore, by Ambassador Moore, the Summit of the Americas. The meetings where they said that they were the most pleasurable was a meeting that was of the private sector. They had a lot of fun. There were companies from different countries. Some of them were not democratic, but they were able to reach agreements. I think that maybe by this we can de-ideologize the summits. I think that, as I mentioned previously, in the continent currently, the great majority of countries are democratic. However, uh, due to the floodings, I had to participate in a summit as head of delegation, and it was sad to see how there was so much consensus in so many of the issues, but because one country would present an issue, all the work that had been done for several weeks or months, the civil society, private sector, and government had been working collapsed because uh, of a particularity of these summits that if there's not total agreement, then we can't move forward. Uh, I think that it's important that democracies should reach agreements to uh, issues that could benefit the immense majority of the citizens of the continent. Panama, in that summit, had a clear position, and even though we want to find reach agreements so that the consensus had a positive result, there was a lot of effort by Ecuador. Panama was clear in its position in regards to Venezuela and other countries that do not share our values. Saying what you think doing it respectfully does not mean that you're going to waver in your efforts. An anecdote that I think I can say now: when the chancellor session or the chancellor's forum finished, the two countries that had this difference, which I'm sure that you know which ones they are, that said very harsh things to each other in good Spanish. As I said, I was trying to be very respectful. I wait until everything ends. I don't stand up from my seat until everything ends. But when it finishes, you have to go to the bathroom, right? And I went racing towards the bathroom, and I see the representatives of these two countries hugging. Oh, what a great debate from your part. I How you caught me on this one. You were right here. I couldn't believe it. 15 minutes before, they was calling themselves all types of names, and in the bathroom they were congratulating each other for being able to debate. I said, why are you doing this in the bathroom and not in public? Very well. Now we've seen the conditions under which the summit is going to take place, that y'all are going to have in your country. Here in our hemisphere, we have countries that are very young, countries that have large youth population. In Panama, it's almost 25% who are less than 16 years of age. So I want to ask you, what part do you consider that the summit can play in engaging youth in the region to face current and future problems in the region in a way that they are truly inclusive or included in the process? That is a very interesting question. We value the engagement and participation of youth as a key element. Everything that has to do with the initiatives for a region. The session that we had prior to this one of the colleagues stated that the youth was not the future, but they're the present because of how quickly future becomes the present. I agree with them. In Latin America, we have to think about integrating or engaging youth in the debates. For many years, we have spoken in Latin America about having the demographic bonus. However, this demographic bonus that was granted by natural evolution of the population or the citizenry of Latin America was not taken advantage of fully, in the sense that having this huge demographic bonus that had a tangible asset called youth, we were unable to retain the best or gather the best of our youth in our countries because, as we all know, there was an immigration way that expelled youth with greatest talent and hardworking elements from their countries. We were unable to take advantage of this demographic bonus to promote the well being and growth of our country. We had a net loss when we allowed the youth of Latin America emigrate to other areas. So the task now is to ensure that the youth that we currently have, we can include it. It is not to designate them, it's to engage them, integrate them, include them so that they can make decisions with us whenever the decision making has to take place, so that in that way they feel committed and can believe in the future that they themselves are building. Because for many years, the role of youth was seen distantly by governments. Youth programs, to be honest with you, when you have a critical, set it on a critical perspective, have been heavily criticized. What are youth programs? What did the youth ministries dedicate just to uh, just to deal with them in recreational as elements, and in political events to create political clientelism. It's important to have a true participation from that segment of the population so that we ourselves can ensure that we are going to be able to grow in the long term, and and that we can deal with what is important to them. Yes, of course, if they participate, they will have trust that they're creating a future. If they don't participate, they don't know what the future holds for them. Very well. We have very little time left in this panel. Mr. Ambassador, I want to go back to you to give us some closing remarks that we will take to the Dominican Republic as uh, issues that will allow us to have a more inclusive summit under a challenging scenario, under a transitional scenario. What advice would you give for our future host? I don't I don't dare to give advice to the vice minister, but what I can say that during the last 30 years we've had a history of achievement. We have to acknowledge this. I've mentioned several of the important achievements and milestones, but that moment of reflection and saying, look at all the milestones that we've achieved, but what are the challenges and opportunities that the future holds? Vice Minister has said something that for me is very important, is the issue of youth. I would add to what the Vice Minister said that if you look in regional surveys, Jenna, the group that feels disengaged from democracies, disillusioned by democracy, it's not the people of our age, it's youth. It's important to include youth, to listen to youth, and that we can they can feel that they're part of the future. Right now, they don't feel they are, and that is the debt that we have currently. So, if the history of summits it has always been how can we be ever more inclusive? We began with civil society, then with business groups, we've added the youth groups. What other groups can we also include so that they can feel part of this process and not marginalized or from summits or marginalized from our democracies? Thank you. Thank you to all of you. That's a good point. radio host for TV and media news. Hello, how's everyone doing? Very well. We are going to have a conversation and we are going to do this quickly because we are short on time. We would like to invite, how are you doing, Marcela? What a pleasure to have you here. We have Marcela Galindo, President of the National Center for Competitiveness, Mayor Irma Hernandez, Mayor for San Miguelito District, Mayor Mizrachi, Mayor for the City of Panama, Enrique Arturo de Barrio, President of Red Lag. He was also President of APD, and Stanley Mota Cunningham, who's the President of Copa Holdings. Still, President of Copa Holdings, there's been announcements that have already been stated for next year. Thank you very much for joining all of us here today. We have several issues that we want to talk. I would like to start with Mayor Alcalde Misrachi. What activities has the Panama City implemented to promote citizen participation in governance process that can also help to serve as examples for other cities in the region? Welcome, greetings to everyone. Welcome, Mayor. Were we short because we are short on time, I'm going to go straight to the point. Citizen participation, we have the technical part, which is the process of citizen participation when you're going to present a project that, let's say we want to create a digital library. Previously, the way that the system would work, you do the citizen call and you provide participation to the citizen, to the borough, and they decide if that's a project that they want or they don't want. What the political system would do is that they would bring you people from other boroughs to participate and in one way or other to influence the desire of the citizenry of that borough. What we have done through digitalization is that for elections, you can only vote for a representative of your borough. When we went in, we started developing a citizen participation system where the vote became digital. That meant that you would validate it with your ID card if you were a resident of the borough. You get the votes of everyone, but you only validate or count the votes of the citizens of the borough. This is one example of how digitalization has helped to improve the participation of the citizenry. Then we have the day-to-day participation. Social network, without a doubt, have impacted or influenced the way that public governance exercises its work. I'll give you an example. A person sent me a video of one of these people that take cares in a parking area. I sent it to the team. The team in less than an hour took this person, the authorities took this person who's an extortionist, and we publish this. Why it's important to publish it is not just for media hits, but it's to create a precedent that you're doing the work. And if you do this, if you continue to participate in those activities, you're going to go wrong. And social networks help you with social shaming, which is even more effective. To heal bad behavior than a penalty or a fine. A perfect example of these erratic drivers, maybe they're not shamed because their faces are not seen, but once their license plate appears in public, and the police place a fine. This is something that the national police and transportation authorities are placing. They're ashamed because they get it in the WhatsApp, and public shaming starts to exercise a key role that influences and improves that behavior that you want to improve. This is just a small example of how from the city, how from mayor's office, citizen participation is improved by using social networks, not just to get to the post, but also to exercise the post. Mayor Hernandez, in the case of San Miguelito, how can we engage more marginalized communities in processes such as the summits to ensure that the voices of San Miguelito can be heard? Thank you for the question. Uh, Welcome. Thank you for inviting me over here so that I can spread the information in the pillar of the summit that have to reach the citizenry in our communities and our boroughs especially in districts that need so much development. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the engagement that I've had with the summit and how impacting it can be for the life of a youngster. When we talk about the Summit of the Americas causing its due influence and how we have to involve communities to participate. When I was about 19 years old, there was a contest in a university here in Panama so that some youth members could participate in the summit that was held in Cartagena, Colombia. We were going to accompany the president delegations to that summit. And I was able to participate in the contest, presented a project. People would vote, students would vote. We won and we went to Cartagena. As a youngster, I was able to live the experience of being in a table of leaders at the continent and to understand the pillars of what was being debated local government, uh, citizen government, and it was a way to engage with local governments to understand the basis, to hear the community, private sector, the business community, and all of their participation. The many times we're not hearing youngsters exactly a space for youngsters. If we are to involve someone, that person has to be sitting in the table. In the previous panel, it would have been great that answering a question, there was someone who was young in that sense, so that we can understand the perspective. Because as we say in our district, the person that doesn't live in the district doesn't understand it. And if you're not young, very little can you talk about what are the experiences that a youngster is having or what policies could be promoted by a youngster. The same thing happens with involving community with more marginalized communities. We have to go to the communities, and how different would it be if an event like this be done not in a hotel in Avenida Balboa, and that we go to my district to a basketball or football field where I'm sure it would fill up with people who are interested in learning and understanding what my leaders are debating. And this is the rewarding part of being able to work with local governments. There's no way to make a mistake if you hear the desires of people and you engage and deal with them. Uh, that is a successful effective policy. That is the power that we have to stop seeing as we get it when we are a politician or when we are in these spaces, and to return that power to those people that have it. In most of the countries in the American continent, it is the people, the citizenry, and it is only by listening to them, being there, facing the realities that our communities face, inviting them also to be part of these spaces where maybe they may feel different, because you have to get accustomed to being in an environment such as this, how you have to handle yourself, but involving the community, placing them on the table or taking the conversation specifically to communities, we will be able to perceive that essence and establish it in the policies that we have to execute, so that the problems that we are living on a day-to-day basis can be solved. Unfortunately, many of these problems have been going on for decades. What is going to be the factors that will differentiate this summit with the previous summits that we've already held? I'm going to stick with that one. If you don't live it, you don't know it. Mr. Stanley, how can companies provide greater engagement by the citizenry and processes such as the Summit of the Americas? Talking about aviation, I all and for people to be able to understand Latin American culture, the U.S. citizen says, "I missed the plane." The Latin American person says, "The plane left," meaning I'm not at fault. The plane left. So I think that in our culture we lack what these youngsters are doing today, inviting people to participate. We come from a culture that is slightly different, and I think that the true way of being able to achieve something is inviting people. You have to know it. You have to place them in the same room. Do you agree? Don't you agree? Whether you agree or you don't agree. And I totally agree with the chancellor who said we have to work on things that we agree on, and on those that we disagree, we will see how we can solve that. But we can't pretend that everyone in the summit is going to agree with everything. If we're going to be in agreement with everything, we're going to be do very little things. For me, inviting the private sector to participate, we have the tools, and maybe I'm going a bit further back, but when we had the Panama Canal referendum, we were unsure whether it was going to be approved or not. And what happened was that the politicians were wary because they were not asking for a vote for them. And it was the private sector companies that were explaining to the employees what was the importance of expanding the Panama Canal, which was able to change the vote. So we can take the message and we can receive the message, but we have to be willing to participate and we have to be willing to invite as well. And an example is that how can the private sector contribute to strengthening democracy and the right of law? I think that the world understands that not no matter what government system you have, that capitalism is the one that produces well-being. We need to continue improving the process, not changing the process. It's clear here in Venezuela they try to invent an economic system. You don't invent an economic system. You can improve it, you can change it, but you have to be able to work within an economic system and see how you can make it more social and more humane. I'm going to go over a minute over my time. I had a friend who was in charge of the use of water of Coca-Cola on worldwide. And one day, talking to him, I said, when I started, it was how to find efficiencies in the plant to use less water. But then I found out that if the community around my plant did not, a factory did not have water, then I wasn't going to have water in my factory. So that mentality of social responsibility, not towards the employees, but to the community, is what is going to improve this. Marcela Galindo, in what way can competitiveness, you are from the National Center of Competitiveness for Country, can be strengthened by a greater inclusion of the voices of the citizenry, as Irma stated, in stages such as the Summit of the Americas or like this one? We would be so surprised if we understand just in how many ways we can do it. Everyone's heard the saying, every head is a world, is a different world. If we want to truly understand the needs, the real needs of the population, here the most amount of people will allow us to get to that understanding of those needs. For example, what people think about the district of Irma, or the needs of the district of Irma are not the same as the district where Meyer is the mayor. To be able to understand the real needs of people will allow us to implement more effective public policies to deal with these needs. So when we talk about effective public policies, we are adding a check to competitiveness. It's also been thoroughly proven that this multiplicity of stakeholders, of ways of thinking, of diversity, is positive for innovation. It allows us to have more innovative solutions, more creative solutions. And when we talk about innovation, so innovative solution, creative solutions, that's another check for competitiveness. And finally, and now, but most importantly of all, when we open the doors for participation and engagement, that generates trust. It generates trust in the processes and institutions, and we live in an environment of trust. This environment is a fertile environment for investment, and when we talk about investment attraction for investment, again, that's another check mark for competitiveness. So one single element ends up reaching over there, because you did say effective public policies, because sometimes we talk about public policies and there's a ton of public policies. How do we add effective to public policies? And in fact, this morning we were in the board meeting of the National Center for Competitiveness, and we have to do the work of not staying at our lofty heights of 35,000 feet and just giving, global goals. We want to improve education. How are we going to do this? We have to go from step A to Z. Uh, if we stay just on general terms, we are not going to be successful. We're not going to be effective. You're not going to be able to measure them. You're not going to be able to execute them. We have to be exact. We have to define that road of how to execute this and how are we going to reach the goals that we are placing on ourselves. Enrique de Barrio, how can we take civil society so that voices of civil society can be heard? I was a youth reporter. I interviewed you once in the Supreme Court after the statements of a chief magistrate, and there was protest going on. I don't know if that's the road to be heard. First of all, thank you to the Atlantic Council, to the Department of State, and to the government of the Dominican Republic. And I give you a hearty applause. I'm a number one fan for constructive dialogue to be able to build consensus. For me, this is crucial to be able to rescue democracy. And I talk about rescuing democracy because it's fallen into recession in many countries. I feel that internally with civil society, we have to find the mechanisms to better promote communication systems because I feel that there's a disparity in messaging and causes. And at the same time, it's important to bet on that constructive dialogue that should exist between civil society, private sector, uh, workers, and academia to be able to make progress. And between summits, that there be true follow-up and monitoring, but with this multi-stakeholder approach. Civil society has a lot to contribute. I can tell you the main initiatives come from civil society and from the private sector, but we have to work together. I think that that's the key. I'm not the oldest person here, but I've had the opportunity in participating in almost all the summits of the Americas and in almost all general assemblies. I say this in a positive sense because we've seen evolution, but there's a lot more to do so that we can head in the right direction. And in regards to civil society, to bet fully on youth, there's a deficit of citizenship and a culture for democracy that is wishy-washy. We have to promote leadership based on values, on principles, and at the end of the day will allow us to elect better. Let's say it openly, to elect better. I have a space for a brief round, Mayor. Which role do you think that citizens should play in providing regional solutions? Their common challenges, needs of Panama and San Miguelito are different, but there are similar needs also in other cities in the region. I think that the success of good municipal administration for Panama City is not just a win for Panama, but it's a reference marker for the rest of the region. And I think in that sense, we all have to put on the Team Panama shirt, no matter who leads, because Panama has to go back to being the reference marker for the region in regards to the democratic process, as well as to the commercial progress. From Panama City, I can tell you that we have to show what cutting expenses and increasing income, which is the basis for any uh, uh, company would do, is the right way to handle public resources because these resources are not resources of the government. It's resources that have been given by the public, and this will influence the rest of the region. Madam Mayor, how can the segmenters that are gathered here today can provide better citizen participation in the summit of the next summit of Americas, and so that summit of the Americas declarations actually are achieved and not just held in a piece of paper? This type of initiative is a key pillar to be able to achieve these goals. Mix them amongst ourselves, network, find, knock on doors, develop and build relationships. I've had 5 months as a mayor of the most populated district of the country and the youngest mayor. Everything works through relationships. We have to break down those paradigms that the public sector is the public sector and private sector is private sector. We have to start enjoining these, linking them to, and we will be able to see how we can achieve the results that our citizenry needs. I want to leave a message from the municipality, and which will be a pillar on the conversations that are of the summit. I defend local power of correct distribution of wealth, and I think that Panama has an impressive potential of having that reputation that we need to recover, as Myra said, of being an important trade hub, of being that reference for the world. But I think we can be a model in decreasing inequalities as we know it, as well as we have one of the best incomes in the region as a country. We also have the worst grading in levels of inequality in all, the entire world. That is work that we have to do from the local governments. We have to stand tough and understand that that is a reality and find the alliances and support that we need, both by the private sector as well as a correct distribution from central governments to ensure that our communities are more and more strengthened and can have reasons and tools to participate in spaces like this and their voices can truly be considered. From the private sector, Stanley, how can we achieve better private citizen participation from with the private sector in summits? I think that one of the things that the summit can do is to focus on less issues so that they can truly comply with the ones that they engage in. The reaction of people is that there's an agenda of 42 things and what 42 things are going to be achieved. I would rather say, let's talk about neighborhood security. Let's talk about water. Let's talk about garbage or pollution. Focus on less because when you fix the first things, then there'll be enough time to fix the other things in order to ensure that people can participate. And not just for the summit. We're also talking about the follow-up, what is going to happen after the summit. I think that if the message is focused, there you will have more participation. If you have an agenda, then if you would have a widespread agenda of 42 different issues. That's what I was talking about. What was debated in the previous summit is not just held as a snapshot. But I think we have to start by explaining what is the summit, because if people don't know what is the summit, very few people are going to want to participate. Let's talk about what is the summit. What do you want to achieve with the summit? What are the goals of the summit? And then they can understand that the work that is being done there benefits them. And in that way, to incentivize them to participate. Once they understand what it is useful for, then we try to find ways to create alliances between the public and private sector. Areas such or agencies such as the National Center for Competitiveness to generate these spaces for participation, especially when we talk about physical spaces, digital spaces, to be able to share information of what is being done. I think we have to create these spaces. I totally agree with what Mr. Stanley has said, that if you try to talk, being a jack of all trades is not helpful here. In the eyes of the day-to-day Panamanian, the layperson, perfect. It's not that you're going to participate in everything, but let's identify what are your needs, what are you interested in participating, and then let's guide the journey in that down that path and incentivize that participation and promote that participation. Enrique, same questions, just so that it's not a issue of the previous summit. You know that where they close on streets and then you take out a photo of our presidents. I'm going to highlight what was said previously. This multi-stakeholder engagement, private sector not being separated from public sector, and to strengthen the mechanisms for oversight and follow-up. At the OAS, they do amazing work. Maria Selena Conte is here. The problem is not the organizer, it's not the OAS. You present the best proposals from all the sectors, And that is where you have the participation, where you can improve the participation. But uh, not only in this event, but also in other summits. It's important to have a participation amongst cities summits and between summits. The OAS meets with its chancellors once a year, but for the summit there needs to be a true oversight and monitoring mechanism that is done by in a multi-sectorial focus, not just single participation. I think it's 4 o'clock sharp. I'm thinking on time. Isn't Copa the has the best timeliness over there? The plane left us already, Mr. Stanley. No, I'm going to finish on time. Someone asked me the other day if a Copa plane waits for me. I say, as long as I'm on time, it will wait for the. Thank you very much for joining us over here this afternoon. Let's continue because I know that we have other commitments with the agenda. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Sí.
Now I have the privilege of closing this conference with a few closing remarks from the ambassador of the United States in Panama, Mari Carmen Aponte, who was here. Madam Ambassador has been an important person, not just for Panama and the leadership in Panama, but also for the leadership throughout the region during her entire career. Madam Aponte is not just a diplomat, but is also a lawyer from Puerto Rico, and also the first woman from Puerto Rico of having been designated as ambassador. A little bit more than 2 years ago, she came to Panama. In the last 2 years, she has strengthened the relationship between all both countries and always promoting the initiatives of cooperation and development. The milestones of the ambassador in Panama have been impressive. And I personally have seen the the impressive achievements that she's done by visiting the embassy. But beyond Panama, Ambassador Aponte has great experience in Latin America as the ambassador of the U.S. in El Salvador in two terms, and also the role of Assistant Interim Secretary for Western Hemisphere Affairs in the Department of State. It's a great privilege to have her here with us to close this important conference for the Americas, for Panama, and for the United States. Her values have been reflected in this conference: resiliency, inclusion, and hemispherical cooperation. Thank you, Madam Ambassador, for your presence and for everything that we have done together and all of your achievements here in Panama.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited about being here. Adrian, Arsh, thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your interest, both not only in Latin America, but especially in Panama. I know that Javier Martínez Hacha, mi canciller, ¿cómo está? A pleasure to see you. Somebody that we enjoy an awful lot working with from the embassy. I'm glad that you are here as well. Embajador Frank Mora, thank you. Thank you for being here. And I think the Minister, Julio Molto, is here as well. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Mr. Molto has been an incredible and wonderful ally of the embassy. I'm really very, very proud to be here because the summit has accomplished an awful lot in the last 30 years. It has been a beacon of progress and a symbol of unity and cooperation amongst member nations. We look forward to continuing building on the progress made since we hosted the 9th Summit of the Americas and to a successful summit hosted in the Dominican Republic next year. And speaking of success, nowhere is this more evident than in the US-Panama bilateral relationship. Over the past few years, we have addressed irregular immigration and remained Panama's primary trading partner and main user of the canal. Working together, we can ensure security and prosperity for both of our countries and throughout the region. Panama is a very important key partner for the United States. We work side by side to advance inclusive, sustainable economic growth, address irregular migration, and bolster our shared security. In the face of unprecedented irregular migration, we're working with regional governments to protect vulnerable migrants, refugees, and other displaced persons and provide them means to rebuild their lives. At the same time, consistent with the Memorandum of Understanding we signed with Panama on July 1, the day of President Mulino's inauguration, the United States is supporting the Panamanian government's efforts to repatriate migrants without international protection needs and who lack grounds to remain in the country. The United States and Panama share a deep commitment to democracy, but there is a risk, as we have seen in other Latin American countries, that such support for democracy erodes over time if the constituents do not see concrete improvements in their lives. But we will achieve these improvements. We will achieve through shared values, respect for human rights, democratic governance, inclusive economic growth, and entrepreneurship, as well as the rule of law. The reality is that we have deep ties in the Western Hemisphere. Our economies are intertwined, but more importantly, and just as well, as our families, our cultures, and certainly our history. Thank you for supporting not only the US-Panama bilateral relationship, but also for helping to create a strong, safe, and secure Western Hemisphere. I'm delighted to have shared these few moments with you. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you to Madam Ambassador Ponte. Now we close our conference. Thank you very much for the speakers, for your presence. Madam Arch, for her presence. Ambassador Mora, all Minister, Mr. Molto, Minister Martinez Sacha. I invite all of you now, all of our speakers, inclusive Ambassador Mora, to please come to the stage so that we can have a group photo at the end of the conference. Thank you very much to all of you.
Lleven un mismo latido en el ritmo, como quien comparte el mismo apellido, porque al fin y al cabo somos latinos. Quiero que la unión que logra la fuerza rompa divisiones y abra más puertas. Quiero que entendamos que cuando todos sumamos se hace la diferencia. Diversos como hay palabras en el diccionario, todos los usan el mismo abecedario. Yo soy como tú eres como yo.